All right, guys. Well, welcome to one of the rare videos I make for my AP classes. I promise to do better about that. But we're going to look today at two poems. Neither's very long, but we're going to look at them and tackle them. And remember, these are in the context of, Hamlet was in your book in a unit about conformity and rebellion. And so we're really going to revolve these poems around those two topics, kind of opposites. Rebellion being I want to do things different. Conformity being I'm going to go along with what everyone else is. We're going to see how both of these poems, in a way, can reference these topics and see what you think. All right. So we're going to start with my favorite of the two, the Percy Shelley. By the way, if you don't, a little trivia here about Percy Shelley. If you don't know, it's not rare trivia here, but Percy Shelley was married to Mary Shelley, who was the writer of Frankenstein. So actually, his wife's a little more famous than he is, but he wrote some killer poems, and this is like my favorite. Okay. All right. So let's get into this one. He says, Men of England, wherefore plough for the lords who lay ye low? Wherefore weave with toil and care the rich robes your tyrants wear? Wherefore feed and clothe and save from the cradle to the grave those ungrateful drones who would drain your sweat, nay, drink your blood? Wherefore, bees of England, forge many a weapon, chain, and scourge that these stingless drones may spoil the forced produce of your toil? Have ye leisure, comfort, calm, shelter, food, love's gentle balm? Or what is it ye buy so dear with your pain and with your fear? The seed ye sow, another reaps. The wealth ye find, another keeps. The robes ye weave, another wears. The arms ye forge, another bears. Now, we're going to stop there and come back because the next stanza is going to take that stanza and flip it a little bit, and then we'll build from there. All right. But up till now, really, you're getting a question about to the men, to the working class of England. Why are you serving the upper class when they treat you this way? Yes, it's a class struggle thing. Get ready for that. Hey, there's our rebellion part. Okay, he's like, rebel against this. Look at these lines. Where do you plow for lords who lay you low? Why are you working for people who just mistreat you? Why do you weave with toil and care the rich robes your tyrants wear? Why are you giving them the tools to subjugate you? Wherefore feed and clothe and save from cradle to grave those ungrateful drones? Why work and provide for these? Because that's what you're doing as the person who's working. If you work at Walmart and you're one of the people working on a day-to-day basis, like Braden, you're doing that every day. You're the ones that are doing stuff. The guy who's the CEO is not the worker. He could take a 6-month vacation and nobody noticed the difference. If Braden doesn't show up to work, they're going to know right away, right? So the fact is that you have to, the workers are the ones. That's what he says when he says, wherefore feed and clothe and save from cradle to the grave those ungrateful drones who would drain your sweat, nay, drink your blood. So and then he continues with that's really what this first set's about. Let's look at that last stanza I read. The seed ye sow, another reaps. The wealth ye find, another keeps. The robes ye weave, another wears. The arms ye forge, another bears. It's basically the idea about you put in all the work, someone else is enjoying the fruits of your labor. Now, before you get upset, Mr. Morris is not trying to make this into a class struggle, communism, Karl Marx type of thing. That quit immediately running to that stuff. What he's talking about here is the fact that he sees an inequality, that he says, we put in this effort, we're getting nothing in return. There's a lot of wealthy people who work really hard to get where they are and deserve what they've gotten. And there's a lot of working people who are lazy and don't deserve any more than what they've got. But as a whole, the point he's making, I think, is a solid one. That a lot of the time, the hardest workers are the ones who are least realized for their effort. And a lot of people who, just happen to be born to the right families or in the right place at the right time become, stupidly wealthy, sinfully wealthy in some ways. And it's just that's how it goes. All right. So look at what happens in the next stanza, because there's some parallelism. He says, sow seed, but let no tyrant reap. Find wealth, let no impostor heap. Weave robes, let not the idle wear. Forge arms in your defense to bear. So I love that. I love the way those two stanzas work together. He's saying, go ahead, keep sowing seed, keep planting, but don't give it all to someone who's a tyrant and who mistreats you. Notice he says no tyrant reap. He's not saying that, your landlord, if they're a good person, don't pay them what they're owed. Of course you should. But tyrants, on the other hand, do they really deserve anything? Find wealth, but don't let any imposter take it and pile it up. Weave robes, but don't let the idle, the lazy, be the ones who profit from it. And finally, the big one there, forge arms, but keep them for yourself so you can bear your own. So, hey, any of you that are mad that thought I was talking about a bunch of, crazy communist stuff here, there's your Second Amendment for you. So that one should make you hate me less. Then he says, shrink to your cellars, holes and cells. In hall ye deck, another dwells. Why shake the change ye wrought? You see the steel ye tempered glance on ye. With plough and spade and hoe and loom, trace your grave and build your tomb, and weave your winding sheet till fair England be your sepulchre. So, the idea here that if you don't want to participate, then fine, go back to your holes and keep building your own casket, is what he's saying. Man, this is a poem about action. I love it, the rebelliousness of it. Hey, the world's terrible the way it is. Let's do something about it. Lots of power in this. Very, very inspirational poem. I love it. Now, here's the other one we're going to do. All right. And this one is called Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night. Very famous poem. Some of you may have already read this one. It's written by a guy named Dylan Thomas. Again, a very famous poet. Didn't live very long. I don't think he made it to 40. If he did, he just made it. All right. So this poem is taught typically when you're talking about structure with the word VNL, which I may have mispronounced. If I did, I apologize. But it's a certain type of structure with poetry that's very confusing, very, very there's a lot of rules to writing this way. It deals with the rhyme scheme. It deals with repetition of certain lines. So again, if you were looking at the poem right now, we've got do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Then he says, though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. See, that line has to be there. It's weird how like the very first line has to be repeated at the end of the second stanza. I'm not sure who laid down the rules for this thing, but it's very weird. All right, but it's a great poem. So let's look at it again. First stanza, he's basically do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rave against the dying of the light. Okay, so they're talking about death. If you didn't catch that, you didn't read it carefully. We're definitely dealing with the concept of death here. Now, what's he saying about it? He's saying don't go gentle into it. Rage against it. Fight against death. Kind of an odd sentiment, but again, we're talking about conformity rebellion. Conformity is just going along with it and giving in and saying, okay, it's my time. I'm going to go. He's saying no, rebel against even death. All right. It says the wise men. Now notice we're going to see wise men in this stanza. The next one's got good men. The next one's got wild men. And then the next one's got grave men. So he's got 4 different types of man here. So the wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning. They do not go gentle into that good night. So wise men know that death is where we all end up, but they feel like they didn't do enough. Weren't impactful enough, so they fight. It says, good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So good men who've done a lot of things feel like there's more to be done, or that maybe they didn't get enough attention for what they did, or if they had only had a little more time, all the things they could do. Those wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. So wild men who've lived crazy lives and realized too late that they didn't take time to do the other parts of life that they cared about, they rage against the dying of the light. And then finally, grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of light. So dying people, when they realize they're coming to their end, he's saying again, fight against death. It says, and you, my father. Now that's who he's been talking to. This is about the death of his dad. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me. Now with your fierce tears I pray, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So you get that. That was the only one that's got 4 lines in it. And you see that last 2 stanzas are really the ones we've repeated. Not last 2 stanzas, last 2 lines we've repeated so much. So this one, what do you think's going on here? Well, we've got this rebellion against even the most natural of things, our death, and how you shouldn't. Now, he's not saying obviously you're not going to be able to fight it, but he's saying don't just give up. So much of our life is about just give up and people who fight. And I'm not so sure I agree with this. When the time comes for me to die, guys, I'm not going to sit here rage against the dying of the light. I'm not going to give up, but I'm also not going to fight it. I've lived a good life, and I love the things that I've given in my time, about 42 years on earth right now. I love my family and what they've done. I feel like I've been an okay father. I feel like I've been a good husband. Some days I feel like I've been a good teacher. Other days I'm not so sure I've done anything positive. But overall, I feel like I've done an okay job. I feel like I've contributed. So when the time comes, I'm not going to rage against the dying of the light. But it doesn't have to necessarily mean that you're old and death is coming from you. It could be just this whole attitude that we see with people where they just give up in general now. with life. Adults are supposed to be cynical and unhappy, so we just give up. That's the kind of conformity we don't want. Fight against that. I always hear teachers tell people who come up to them and say, "I'd like to be a teacher too," and they're like, "You never should do that. It's a terrible job. You don't want this." I go out of my way not to do that because that's something I want to rebel against. That idea that teaching's a terrible job. It's not. All right. So that's what I think he's kind of talking about here. The idea of rebelling against the attitudes, the giving up attitude. He kind of encapsulates it around death and getting older. But I feel like there's more to it. If you just limit it to that, the poem doesn't have quite the same impact. So again, rage against the dying of the light, rage against that hope that's in your chest that tells you, you have that you care about your life, the excitement that you have about your job. Just because you've been showing up for 20 years doesn't mean it doesn't still have each day doesn't bring a whole new set of blessings along with its set of challenges. So I think there's more here about rebellion against the idea that we're just supposed to give up, that this is just how things are. We should never give in to that. We don't accept things how they are. We work to change them if we feel like they're wrong. So I think that's really important. So I think that's what we're dealing with. And I think you can see the similarity in these two poems because of that. All right. Okay, guys. Well, that's going to end the discussion. It gets you out of here right at around 12 minutes, probably by the time I'm done. So you can work on your questions. Make sure you stay on top of that. And man, I'm excited about getting to be back with you guys really soon because I think this poem's for later on the second week when I'm out, and I should be getting close to being back, and so that I can spend some time talking about some literature with you guys before we start prepping for the AP test, which not my favorite part of the class. So anyway, enough of that griping. We're not going to get negative, are we? So let's stop here. But we will be together again. I think tomorrow is the plan. So I'm excited about that. Anyway, have a great night and have a pleasant, rest of the week.